Hello and welcome to our webinar about digital skills which energy employees need for the energy transition. My name is Carl Jeffrey. I'm editor of Digital Energy Journal in London. So we often talk about how we can help oil and gas people find ways to improve operational efficiency and reduce emissions, but to do this, they need digital skills. So we could define a basic level skill as being able to make a document in Microsoft Word. An intermediate level skill could be the ability to work with specialist software like SAP. And an advanced level skill could be the ability to do code programming and data analytics in Python. So our first speaker today is Dr. Daniel Brown. He's Chief Business Architect of Flare Solutions and a former head of data and digital with Offshore Energies UK. He's a former global data operations manager with BP, among other roles. Then we're going to hear from Dr. Aida Garcia Lazaro from the Center for People Led Digitalisation and the Institute of Policy Research based at the University of Bath in UK. So they're going to present the result of research by the Center for People Led Digitalisation that was supported by Offshore Energies UK and the UK Nuclear Decommissioning Authority. So they map the digital skills that are needed for different roles and what this means for the oil and gas workforce. So it shows the areas where demand for people with certain digital skills is growing. And this is where organizations should focus their training and where workers should be looking to build their skills. And the research was based on data from recruitment advertising. So we're going to have a talk from Daniel and Aida of about 30 minutes, then we'll take your questions. And Daniel's going to start. So I'd like to invite Daniel to start the talk, please.
Fabulous. So my first digital skill is, can you get the slides up and running? So I'm going to click this one and click that one. And then Carl, if you can tell me if you can see what we need to see. Is that working for you?
Yes. Yes.
Fabulous. In which case, thank you very much, Carl, for the introduction. So my name is Daniel Brown. I work for Flare Solutions. Flare Solutions is a company that does intelligence search, classification, and document and information management. So it's not an obvious company to be coming from when talking about digital skills. So I need to clarify from the start that this work arises from my time I spent at Offshore Energies UK. And it arises from a collaboration that kicked off at an event which started in Offshore Energies UK, but then moved very quickly into the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority, where I got to know Dave Clark, who works in the NDA doing a variety of information management roles. In our discussion, we discovered that there's a lot of similarities between offshore oil and gas and the nuclear industry. Both are high risk, high hazard industries. Both are perhaps not the first industry sector that new graduates, new starts might be looking at when they are kind of seeking a job and a long-term career. And they're also industries where there's perhaps the workforce is more on the older side in terms of always talking about a crew change and dealing with the consequences of that. So what this has drove the NDA towards, and also has been driving the offshore energy industry towards, is the question of how do we make the best use of the people that we have in industry in terms of getting work done and keeping the energy flowing that keeps the UK keep warm and keeps us all mobile and all the other things that good access to energy does. We're also realizing both within the NDA and within offshore energy that there's a lot of transition going on. And neither of those two energy markets is static. And with transition comes a lot of mobility. And one of the questions that we spent some time talking about is what is it that makes it difficult for workers to move from oil and gas to nuclear, to civil engineering, back into nuclear, to be able to swap and change between industry sectors into renewables, into carbon storage, into hydrogen, wherever it is that their career might wish to take them next. And one of the concerns that we had is whether the level of digital capability in the workforce might prove a barrier to that mobility. So some of the context that we had. So we know that use of digital technology is key to achieving net zero. We can't do that without a solid digital footprint and foundation to the net zero journey. We know that both oil and gas and nuclear are cautious in their adoption of new digital technologies, which suggests, just thinking about the reputations of those industries, that they may not be the first adopter, may not even be the second adopter for some of the new technologies that may well be more popular and maybe becoming required in job adverts in other industry sectors out there. So there was a concern, a worry, that there may be a digital divide growing between the digital capabilities of those working in the energy sector and those working in other areas, and that would then make it difficult for those seeking a career that's mobile between sectors to be able to do that. Because if you can't tick the digital skills boxes on those job ads, then perhaps you don't even make it to interview then in terms of being able to get that next role. So it's a question that then comes back to the question of the digital foundation to a just and effective energy transition. Do the digital skills that are in our workforce pose a barrier or pose an opportunity for the mobility of staff from one industry sector to another? So the conversation that Dave and I had started off as a worry, and then we started to look at the data. And we had a certain amount to go on, because this isn't the first time that people have looked at the question of digital capability in the workforce and come back with some statistics that are arguably really quite worrying. First was looking at the UK digital strategy. This was published 2 or 3 years ago now, and it's quite startling in terms of the opportunity that the UK is losing because of our lack of digital skills in the workforce. So there's a £63 billion per year loss to the economy in GDP because of digital skills gaps. Those people leaving full-time education, only less than half of them have the advanced digital skills required in order to make that leap into into the workforce. And many companies cite a lack of available talent as the single biggest constraining factor to their growth. So that's starting to suggest that the worry that Dave and I had is actually borne out by the data. Further on within the UK digital strategy, there's a few more statistics I've not thrown up here. It says that 30% of skill shortage vacancies involve a lack of basic digital skills. So when companies are trying to recruit into areas where there are explicit skill shortages, about a third of those fail because, again, the digital skills aren't there. And then a final point from the digital strategy, it says, it speaks to the question of, is this a recruitment problem or is this a training problem? It highlights that over 80% of the workforce that will be working in 2030 is already in the workforce today. So it suggests that this is probably not a strategy, this is probably not an issue where recruitment is going to be a very effective way to figure it out. And there may well be a training and skills development angle to that. But that's getting a little bit ahead of ourselves in terms of the story. To bring this into oil and gas, so OEUK has run in collaboration with a variety of other industry organisations, a couple of surveys which again help to put some meat on the bones of, is this a concern in terms of the digital capability of the offshore workforce, or is this something where we actually have data in terms of how we back this up? And the first one was from the Oil and Gas Digital Maturity Survey back in 2020. So Deloitte, who ran that survey for us, they have a digital maturity index, and that puts oil and gas back in 2020 firmly in last place in terms of kind of sectoral digital maturity. So working with new technologies, new software, all of those things that you would expect leading edge industry sectors to be making most of. So you can see telecom, banking, technology sectors all the way to the left in terms of their maturity, oil and gas all the way to the right in terms of its lack of maturity there. And then moving forwards to 2023, there's then the question of how are organizations set up to adopt new technology. just looking at the tools and technology and training that's out there today, roughly a third of organizations don't have the skills or the tools and trainings that they need simply to use existing technology. Over 2/3 of organizations don't have the skills, tools, and training they need to adopt new technology and practices. So this suggests that there is very likely some kind of blocker from a digital skills perspective in terms of how the oil and gas industry is able to adopt new technologies. It also suggests that the skills and capabilities of oil and gas workers are probably not where they need to be in terms of tools and training. So that helped in terms of fleshing out the worry about this and the question of is this an area that we should be investigating? Um, in order to move this first forwards, we needed, and particularly if you're going to take this to an organisation like Skills Development Scotland or one of the other skills development bodies, you need a little bit more than a concern and worry and some general statistical information in order to demonstrate that we have a problem. So Dave very kindly introduced me to the lovely people at the Centre for People Led Digitalisation. And so what started off as a concern and worry then became a roughly 2+ year research project for the Centre of People Led Digitalisation to take on. So looking at the question of, do we have the data? Do we have the evidence that speaks to where actually is oil and gas in terms of its digital journey? Can we demonstrate that whether jobs in the energy sector are less or more digitally demanding than in other sectors? And in particular, what kind of digital skills are being requested? So are they the basic skills that Carl talked about earlier on? So is it okay if all we know is how to use Excel? Or is the offshore energy sector more or less demanding of the higher level digital skills that other sectors are also asking for? And then on the basis of that, you can then start to come up with interventions which are then evidence-based around training and such like. So, so that was the introduction. So that got us to the point that we were able to engage with the Centre for People-Led Digitalisation on these two research questions. So I'm now delighted to hand over to Aida, who has been working at the PLD for the last several years, who was leading this this research study. Aida, can I hand over to you to take the story forwards?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So can we move to the next one? Yeah, thank you. So yeah, precisely as Dan mentioned, this was actually a virtuous circle, because on the side of people-led digitalization, we were looking at the digital adoption and what is effect in terms of labor market, in terms of company needs, and at the same time, they approach with these two questions, and that seemed like the perfect excuse to start this study. And so we are a group of economists and engineers in people-led digitalization. For this particular case, we were working with another economist from the University UNAM in Mexico, and myself in economics in University of Bath. And we have access to a data set that looks at all the job vacancies advertised in the UK over the last 10, 12 years. And so we thought, actually, if we want to look at what are the requirements that companies, because one side that this is what Dan already presented, is what companies report that they need according to what to surveys, right? But the other way to look at that same need is by looking at what is the type of people they are hiring or they are trying to hire. And the way to look at that is by analyzing the job vacancies that are being advertised in the UK labor market. So we had access to this LICAS data set that has vacancies for all the companies that advertise online. There is a gradual increase of vacancies over the years as well, because at the same time, we are moving to the digital world. So more and more people advertise online, even for the low skill occupations that in the past, it used to be said that they are more advertised like more face-to-face or in the outside of the doors of shops, etc. Right? So what we do with this data set is we look at, first of all, we make sure that these job vacancies have a list of skills. And this list of skills we can classify in a way, no? And what we do is that we use two data sets from LICAS. One is the job vacancies itself, and the other is the taxonomy of skills, open taxonomy, as they call it. That is a list of the skills that have been advertised in or listed in these job vacancies. And that comprehends 26,000 skills over the last 12 years. And we classify initially this list of skills, and we said we want to identify which of those are digital and which are not. And examples of digital skills, as mentioned before, could be the use of Microsoft Word, could be the use of SAP, or even a higher level of requirements for software, but could be also the support in digitalization processes. It's a different nature of digital, but still it's helping, right? On that front. And examples of non-digital skills could be communication skills, management, problem solution, it could be teamwork, or could be any other specific skill, but not digital, no? So, okay, once we classify or we identify those digital skills, we were left with 4,600 skills. And we use those, and we said, okay, within this, those are heterogeneous, right? It could be from programming, it could be from use of Excel. So we need to find a way to aggregate them or classify them in a way that seems more homogeneous. And the way that we did it is that we thought there is a very good map out of the top end of skills, which are AI, cybersecurity, cloud solutions. And there is also a good understanding of the basics, but there's not much on the middle. So we are going to classify our skills in 3 levels. Basics are more related to a text processor, the access to internet, some basic digital records. Intermediate skills are more related to a specific software that does not require any programming level. But it could be SAP, it could be accounting software, it could be finance software, it could be even some level of IT tasks, but that are not very complex. And then we have the advanced skills that are, we said it in the document, is mapping out what's called the frontier technologies. That is established by the World International of Patent Office, that includes AI, machine learning, big data, cybersecurity, cloud computing, etc. So what we do is then we classify those skills in 3 levels, and we use 2 methods to do that. One is manual. We look, search the skill, and then see where it's being used, and we classify it in these 3 levels. And the other way to do it is running a machine learning model. And so we look how well we have manually classify it, and how well it's compared with the model. And then we arrive to a conclusion. And that's how we ended up with a set of skills levels. So basic, intermediate, and advanced. If we move to the next one, we see examples, no, that are those been mentioned. Some very few examples, but we have many in those, right? And just to give you a sense of what is in each of the elements, we can move to the next one. So once we did that, we said, okay, we know what are the skills and its level, no? Now what we need to do is to go back to the data set on job postings and say, in which job vacancies we can find these skills by level. First of all, identify the job vacancies with at least one digital skill. And that's what this plot is showing. And the second part that I'm showing in the next one is once we know what are the vacancies that require at least a digital skill, let's classify them among basic, intermediate, and digital. So this plot is showing the proportion of vacancies requiring any type of digital skill. And this sort of confirms what Dan mentioned from the beginning, that oil and gas was left behind, at least from 2015 and maybe before then, and but increase the proportion of requirement of digital talent until 52.6 in 2022. And that's almost double or a third, no, of increase. And you can see it in the plot. And we wanted to compare it with other sectors just to get a benchmark and see how the oil and gas is doing comparing with, for example, finance. No? That it's been known that is one of the sectors that has been ahead. And despite the difference in level, the increase has been lower. And it's fair to say that that might be because this is job postings, right? So because they already have a high level of digital talent as employees, they might require less number of new people with those skills. But in the case of oil and gas, because they were behind, the increase is quite significant. And that is the signaling that the industry is actually taking a strategy to hire new talent because they are adopting the technologies, no? So they require people to do so. And when you see the numbers in 2022, we can also observe that there are differences with the electricity sector and with manufacturing that are below the oil and gas. No? That was not the case in 2015, but nowadays that's how it looks like. And obviously, yeah, there is a level in which the manufacturing sector is reducing the proportion of GDP that is producing anyway. But yeah, we can move to the next one. And here we said, okay, there is a 33% in 2015 and a 52% in 2022. But now how they are, distributed across the digital skill levels. And one of the surprising, at least at the beginning, but not so much when we look at the context of AI and other digital technologies, is that the basic digital skills has been decreasing significantly, persistently, so from 2020, that it was a pandemic year. So we see that the job vacancies requiring basic skills went from 39% to 19.5%, which is massive. But we observe a recomposition because nowadays intermediate skills, you could see in the light blue, has been increasing almost a third, and advanced skills in the same way. You can you see in the line is for advanced. It went from 3.8 to 6%. It's almost double. The axis probably doesn't help because the number is small, but the numbers confirm that is a massive increase as well. So what is the takeaway? And I think on that, yeah, we, I think Dan might want to say something, or shall I?
I'm very happy to jump in. So if I just go back to the previous slide. So I mean, I think so Aida's very neatly taken us through the data and what's in there. The challenge for the oil and gas and indeed the nuclear community is trying to understand what this means in terms of how the shape of the sector has changed over the past 7 to 10 years in terms of the data set that's there. And I think, as Aida said, if you look at 2015, the reputation of oil and gas as a sector that was behind on the digital curve appears to be completely justified. There's a very low percentage of roles that are requesting any digital skill in there. So 2/3 of roles in the industry were not asking for any digital skill whatsoever. So that kind of fits with the reputation of the industry as old. But if you go forwards to 2022, and the graph is a bit noisy. So the graph for finance and insurance is much more straightforward, as are manufacturing and electricity. But I think that probably represents some of the turbulence that's been going on over those years as the oil price went up and went down in a really chaotic manner during COVID and so on. But if you look at the shape of the graph, look at the shape of the curve, what you see is a very steep rise from about 1/3 of jobs requiring a digital component to over 1/2 of them requiring a digital component. So that's encouraging. I think the question in the back of my mind for that is whether this is a question of an industry that has recognized that digital is important and is trying to recruit its way out of a skills gap, or whether this is a question of it's an industry that's recognized that digital is important and is adding digital into its new openings, as well as investing in the training question, which is clearly there in terms of those who are already in the industry. So back to the point from the UK digital strategy from a few years ago, if we have 80% of our workforce already in the workforce, then we're not going to get that upskilling in the workforce simply through a recruitment strategy. But the signal that we are after people with a much stronger digital component to them is very clear from the data, and that is encouraging. If you take that forward, then the question of what kind of digital component are we recruiting for, and hence will we need to develop, then is also really interesting. So the level of basic skills being demanded on job adverts is very much has decreased from about, it's gone down by about 1/2, as Aida mentioned, whereas the intermediate skills are very much the area where growth is taking place. And the advanced skills that are in there, so as I say, pretty much doubled in terms of 3.8% to 6%. So the areas that we start to think about in terms of policy is, what do we do? And do we have the tools and frameworks that are needed in place to recruit, to train and develop for the skills that are being requested? I would argue that for the advanced digital skills, so we have the Sophia framework in terms of understanding what they are. We have organizations like the BCS. We have so many digital organizations out there that are providing training courses in advanced teams, data modeling, AI, cloud computing, all of that stuff. That's pretty freely available and pretty well structured out there in terms of readily available resources. Similarly, there's the UK government has a digital essentials framework, which will get those who need to go from nothing to being able to comfortably turn on a computer, use a mouse, navigate the internet safely. All of those things are now covered through the basic digital framework that the government has put together. So again, there's organizations offering that level of skills enablement and skills development that's out there. The gap in the middle of this is, what do we do about all of the other stuff? All of those tools that you're required to use in your daily training, but which aren't covered by Sophia, aren't covered by the basic digital essentials framework. They require you to have this meta skill of knowing how to learn how to use these applications in order to get on with them. So it's that ability to learn how to develop those intermediate level skills that we see as missing. So the conclusion of this, that's certainly I see in terms of the offshore energy industry, and I think it would be applicable into nuclear as well, is that where we have money available for skills development, putting that into the missing middle, into the gap of between the basic and advanced, and investing in our employees in terms of how they get to grips with those business applications, how they learn to work with Power BI, how they learn to bridge the gap between basic and advanced. That is the important capability building piece, and that is where we should be seeking support from government, from Skills Development Scotland, and from all the skills framework bodies that are out there. So it's exciting that we've moved, really exciting that the industry has become much more digital over these few years. But knowing that now, having the evidence for this, that then pushes the question back to the skills development bodies as to how do we meet this new demand for more digitally enabled people working in the offshore energy space, so that they then also have those skills to enable them to meet pace, as we saw in finance, manufacturing, and in energy, so they can then move to go and work in those other sectors if that's how their careers take them. So I think all in all, it's a wonderful piece of evidence-based research which we can then take forward to help influence policy. So that's Aida was my context in terms of what this means for the oil and gas sector. But I think you have some bonus research to take us through as well in terms of other aspects of looking at this. So if I go on to the next slide, do you want to take us through this piece?
Yes, thanks, Dan. Yeah, exactly, because we look at I'm an economist by training, so we always look at the impacts that it has in the labor market, no, and particularly in earnings. So there is already some literature on the effect that requiring certain type of skills could give you a premium in terms of income, right? So that's been done for cognitive skills, for social skills, but I think there is little done for digital skills. And so we wanted to contribute in this sense, and we asked the question is, from those vacancies that are listing digital skills, what is the impact in terms of the wage that they are offering, comparing with this same type of skills, job vacancies, but without listing those skills? And so if we can go to the next one, we compare pairs with pairs and apples with apples. We look at vacancies within the same sector, within the same occupation, within the same location, and we differentiate those that require digital skills and those that do not. And we find that that is quite significant. For vacancies that require any type of digital skills, the premium that we call it digital skill premium, or wage premium more known in the literature, is that there is a gap of 5.8% in all the energy sector. But when we go to oil and gas, that can go until 11.6%. I comment in a moment about this, but first insight is companies are trying to attract talent by increasing the wage offer. And that is always that's always been the case. But when it's about digital skills, the gap could be more significant. Okay, and if we only focus on intermediate skills, the average wage premium is 2% for different sectors within the energy industry, but for oil and gas is up to 8.6%. And for advanced technologies that include AI, machine learning, and all the other technologies we know, the premium is 8.9 and 21% for oil and gas. Now, we always wonder whether certain skills are more valued than others, right? But in here we have different effects. Certainly digital skills are more valued than others, and that's part of these numbers. But the other is that wages can be that high because are showing the difficulty that those sectors show to attract talent. And we were talking with Dan previously, and we were just, getting some ideas of what could be the case, no? And we were mentioning that more recently, particularly, is that when all the agenda about net zero and eco-friendly, energies is harder to attract talent in oil and gas. And therefore, there might be an incentive of companies to, attract talent by increasing wages. But there might be also an effect that since everybody is talking about AI and machine learning, asking for someone with those skills immediately increases the price, because everybody wants that people. And therefore, you need to, bet higher to attract that applicant. So there are a lot of things in this, but we wanted to show what is the premium that companies are facing when they want to attract talent. Now, we don't know yet what is the final outcome of at which the people is being hired after negotiations, but this is a good indicator of what is the initial offer of companies. And obviously, there is more need for further research in this part, and also looking at the supply. So, who are the applicants? What are the skills that they are coming from? And whether or not, because that's part of the explanation, no? Companies are hunting talent, but it's been difficult, so they need to increase wages. So we need to work also on the other side of the market, and to make sure that the workforce, the existing workforce, and the new people graduating from schools have the skills that they can compete in the market, and they can actually get a job with those skills. So, yeah,
So I think this is a fascinating slide, Aida, in terms of what's in there. It doesn't necessarily tell us why what's going on, but it certainly gives us some clues as to what this means for the workforce. And I think the first thing that jumps out is it answers the question of whether it pays to do digital training. Because absolutely it does, because these are the percentages you'd expect your salary to increase, I think, if you're able to answer a job advert that is requesting the digital skills that are out there. So in terms of, is it worth investing in yourself and investing in your digital capabilities? Absolutely is the answer to that one. It will pay back. What is more intriguing is that if you're investing in those intermediate level digital skills, you get even more of the payback, particularly in the oil and gas industry. And if you're able to master a digital skill that's in demand by an advanced digital skill that's in demand by the oil and gas industry, then there is a significant premium that the oil and gas industry is willing to pay in order to attract you to work for them. So it's not clear if that's because there aren't enough people with those skills, so everybody is paying a lot for those, or whether it's a challenge of being able to move to an oil and gas friendly location, wherever that might be, in order to do the work. But it certainly suggests those skills are in demand. And it also suggests that for those companies that are recruiting for those skills, being flexible in terms of things like location might be an opportunity, might be a way to help fulfill that demand and manage some of the tightness of salary and headcount and all of those things that we're seeing in the market. So it is a fascinating piece of research, and it certainly helps in terms of what we should do as individuals, as well as what we should do as companies in terms of how we build our skills and how we market ourselves in terms of our next career moves. One thing I wasn't entirely sure about is quite how this tells the story of mobility between sectors, because it does suggest that once you're in oil and gas, that's a pretty comfortable place to be.
Yeah.
So if you're there because of an advanced digital skill, there might be a little bit of a pay drop coming your way if you then need to go work in one of the other sectors that's listed there. But it certainly suggests that all of those sectors are after those skills. So the opportunity to find a role if that need arises, then that should certainly be there if you have those skills. You were looking thoughtful there, Aida. Do you want to come back on that one?
Yeah, so I'm thinking that actually, I mean, it's a very interesting question, and there might be positives and negatives, right? Because yeah, if you only look at the salary, definitely you should be in oil and gas. But the other thing we need to consider is location, because oil and gas is in specific places in the UK that might not be the biggest cities. Which is also a massive element in when people make a decision, no? And particularly for people with kids or families, and so that's another element. The other is housing, uh, housing prices, living standards in the different locations, and shameless advertisement. We are doing another project on particularly focusing on AI and cloud computing, and we are looking at the other side of the market, how much companies could increase or not the salary advertised, considering the competitors that they have in a location. Say in London, there is a higher demand of programmers, for example, but there are also many other companies. So you need to level the salary offer up with the competitors. But if we are looking at a small town where they are requiring maybe 5 programmers in a year, the chances that the salary is going to be lower is higher because there is not much competition. So that is the other element that is going to move downwards the salary. So there is a level that is associated to the skill, that is a premium, so positive. But then the market concentration is a negative. So that's going to be in some places balance out, in others still be positive. So that's another interesting question as well. And that affects the mobility across sectors and across locations.
I think the challenge of demand, supply, and mobility is absolutely heart of this work. So it's fascinating to see how much light we've been able to shed on this, but also how many questions are still there to be answered about where do we go next. I think, Aida, our time is running out in terms of the presentation side of this. So would you like to wrap up? And I'll say a couple of words at the end.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, basically we wanted first takeaway is oil and gas is much better nowadays than in 2015 in terms of the digital adoption, and that's been signaled by the requirement of a digital talent. And we also see that other sectors are increasing the digital adoption. This is like a general journey, not just in the UK, but across the globe, right? And but we want to recognize that oil and gas is doing well in terms of that intensity of requirement. And but as mentioned before, we need the other part of the market, where not only companies are requiring more talent with those skills, but there is a pool of applicants with those skills that we effectively can translate those attempts into a workforce working in those companies and propel what is being said, that digital technologies are going to improve productivity and therefore economic growth. So that's necessary. If we only have one side of the market, then we are still not materializing the benefits of digital adoption. And obviously, the main message as well is it's relevant to focus on AI and advanced technologies because it's been doubled, but also let's focus on intermediate skills because not all the companies are at the level where they require AI technologies. Not yet. They will, but there are still a lot of companies, particularly the SMEs, that they are in the process of digitalizing the systems. And for that, AI is not necessary, but other type of skills the second tier, let's say, are relevant at this point. And I think that's it. And we have the final slide on if you want to know more about this collaboration. We have the case study in the PLD website. We have the LinkedIn, and we have the link for the academic paper as well that is in second stage of review at the moment. So hopefully it's going to be accepted. And any of this material is open, so just let us know.
Yeah, thank you, Aida. So absolutely do check out the PLD website for the case study. Do find them on LinkedIn. Just on a personal note, it has been enormous fun. Very, very rewarding and stimulating to work with Aida, the team at the PLD, also with Dave Clark at the NDA, and to be able to do a partnership that crosses the energy barrier from oil and gas into nuclear, and to come up with results which are valued by both organisations has been fascinating. So it's a big thank you to the PLD for all the work that they've put into this, and I think also kind of I wish them well on their next step in their evolution, because I think the PLD journey has come to an end. So, but moving on now to become the centre for people-led net zero, I think. So we'll see where that takes them in terms of taking a people-centric approach to how do we deal with all of the various issues and challenges that are out there in the net zero world. So again, thank you to Aida, thank you to everybody at PLD for their work. I think, Carl, with that, we get to hand back to yourself, and hopefully you found this as interesting as we did.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so I'll just stop the sharing, and yeah, we're open to questions from the audience if you have any. But I've got a few lined up. Just the skill. So we're talking about an employer asking they want somebody who can do a certain job that involves digital technology. So it's not just like knowing a software; it's about getting something done. I guess that's quite important, is it? Yeah, and then so there's such a huge range of skill. I was thinking if someone in their mid-20s is working as a computer programmer, they may have been developing digital skill for 15 years since they were 10 years old or something. It's not possible for somebody to catch up just by doing a course. But then if we're talking about the ability to use a certain software package, you know, if you know SAP, you want to learn IFS or something, perhaps that is a couple of days. So I guess there's an enormous range of, I don't know if I'm getting more granularity into this this sort of needs question, I suppose. Is that probably something you've thought about?
Well, it probably comes into that ultimate question as to who's in charge of your career, because it is very comfortable, quite easy. I mean, I've done this myself over the years, just to allow your job just to kind of keep doing what you're doing, and not then to focus on the development side of that. I think what this research shows us is that the world of digital is out there. It's becoming even more relevant to well over half of jobs now, I think, and the graph we're requiring an intermediate level digital skill. So if your career path to this point hasn't required you to engage with the digital world, if you've got there by other means, then there is a risk that your next step, if you're forced to take one, is going to be a very big step, and it's going to be quite hard to manage, because you have to get onto that digital journey in order to achieve it. So I think it comes back to that focus in the energy transition of investing in yourself, investing in your digital skills, making use of the opportunities that your workplace provides you in order to get to know these digital systems that are out there, because they are going to become fundamental to the next 5, 10, 15 years of your career, depending on how long you have before you're looking for retirement. And if you don't have that able to tick the digital boxes on the job advert, then it's unlikely you're going to get through to the next stage of interview. So it's certainly a real strong encouragement to take advantage of the possibilities that there are out there to get after it.
Yeah, it's very hard to. Oh, go on, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, just to comment on that, one element that is a bit of what Dan and Dave have been talking about, the fluidity, concept. I think it's very important that nowadays people are portable. So being the portability, so you can move across sectors. So on that level, you need to look at the skills that are or could be transferable, not just the soft skills, but also the technical skills. And because you could be in finance, or you could be in industry, but say, for example, some level of coding is valuable in both industries. And the other is that some level of flexibility. And that's a soft skill that always come with the willingness to learn new things. Could be any, no? So depending of the field you're working on, but that's for me the message for people, no? You need to invest, yes, in yourself, but you need to be willing to learn, because we are living in a world that is moving rapidly, and I mean, we cannot cope with everything that is just every day there, but you need to be selective on what are those skills that are going to be necessary. And there is a level of technical skills, but there is also another level of soft skills, and particularly this flexibility to work in different environments, different settings, with newer skills, newer tasks. That's to me highly important. And just the final comment on that, every vacancy with those advanced digital skills required comes without doubt with a list of soft skills, which is highly relevant, because people who are very high tech might not always invest in the soft skills. And that's still important, because recruiters are looking at that. People are not going to work alone all the time. So, yeah.
I feel like this is a subject we've ignored as an industry for years, and it's great you're putting a light on it, but also throws up so many questions, as I think you said yourself. I mean, so I'm thinking, if you've got a geologist who's done subsurface modeling and now they're going into storage, presumably they use the same software packages, so there's not a lot of learning they'd have to do. And similarly, a offshore engineer that's moving into wind, but then maybe somebody else has to learn some new software package that's specific to the details of carbon storage. It's details like this, I suppose, that we've got to people have to understand, isn't it?
So there's a minute I used to mention the word fluidity there. One of the things that kicked this process off was a workshop with the Nuclear Decommissioning Agency and others on the question of fluidity of jobs and skills, and the ability to switch from one to another as your career goes ahead. So companies like Wood have worked in the nuclear sector as well as in the offshore oil and gas sector, looking at the renewable sector, and there is fluidity. So if you're an electrical engineer, you can do electrical work of an oil and gas installation. You can do the same commissioning a turbine in a wind farm. You can do the same in a power station or working in the nuclear industry. It's the same skills, just applied fluidly in a different working environment, plus or minus various different rules and regulations that make it safe and wise to do that. So we have fluidity in terms of the practical skills that the workforce has. We need that same fluidity in terms of the digital skills. So I mean, we're using Zoom today as a technology, but we could have been WebEx, we could have been Teams, we could have been Google Meet, we could have been all sorts. They're all kind of similar. But then it's that fluidity approach that kind of says, well, there ought to be a button to turn my camera on and off. There ought to be a button to turn my microphone on and off. I know it should be there somewhere. Can I find it? Can I figure it out? And am I willing to go through the effort and the annoyance of doing that in order to get the benefit of being able to get on the call and use it? So I mean, that's a very kind of trivial example of digital fluidity. It's much more so in terms of some of the broader apps that are out there. But being willing to go down that road, to try it, to learn through experimentation, and then and the doors that opens as a consequence, I think, is one of the learnings from this.
Yeah, you mentioned about the meta point about the ability to learn something quickly. I mean, I suppose some of us who work a lot in software like to think we can learn things very quickly, although perhaps we get very impatient, whereas somebody else can be very diligent and learn something carefully, but also takes them a lot longer to grasp how to do something, I suppose. It's the sort of thing that very hard to put in words. I guess some people can do it, some people can't, isn't it? It's very hard to say any more than that, isn't it, sometimes?
So I think that the concept of meta skills, I think, is now very much out there in the educational world in terms of, it's not so much learning a thing, but it's knowing how to learn a thing. So that when you move from live meeting to Teams to whatever comes after Teams, you're up for the challenge of figuring out how the next thing works. And you have the mental models which allow you to go and figure it out, read the manuals if you have to, whatever else it might be, in order to get you going. And you're not afraid of that. You're confident you can do it. and then you just sort of move on to the next challenge. So the meta skills of knowing how to approach this are even more important than the skills of being able to do a specific thing with a specific technology set. It's a fascinating area of educational development.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, I guess we develop these over a lifetime, don't we? It's not something you can learn on a course. Like to do coding, you've got to think like a computer thinks, and it comes intuitively to some people, but not at all to others, isn't it? And
so I think that's a real interesting point, because it touches on the question of preference. And everybody's different, and we're all drawn to certain ways of working, certain styles of working. One of the concerns that we have in this is whether there is a section of the population who just frankly hate computers. I mean, I know there's some of those in my family. They would rather, the last thing they want to do is figure out why it doesn't work anymore, or they just want it done. They don't love them. They're a necessary evil in their lives rather than something they would naturally adopt. And there's certainly a good percentage of the workforce are in that camp. So if they found a way to avoid bringing that necessary evil into their lives and just got away by other means, then done very well so far in their careers. But I think the challenge of this is that the digital world is becoming unavoidable. So it's that point of, do you engage with it? Do you get onto the training ladder and start to figure out how it works, and the pain and difficulty and annoyance that will bring? The risk in this one is that it will just drive some folk into retirement. They would rather just not have to deal with it anymore, and they'll find a way to change career completely or just withdraw from the job market because they hate the computers so much. So there's a challenge there for the computer people in terms of designing systems that are actually nice to use, as not every system out there is well designed, intuitive, all the things you'd want it to be. So there's certainly that challenge. But I think that doesn't need to be met by that desire to learn as well, and to feedback and to get on with these things. Aida, what are your thoughts in terms of the educational journey?
It's really hard, because even at the universities, there's been a discussion how to cope with the changes in the labor market demands, no? And to me, is at a higher level, let's say, advanced technologies. Still, you can learn to use software now, but maybe in 10 years' time, the software that is required is different. And it's good to learn the software, and it's necessary. But what you need to teach people or graduates is to learn how to learn, you know, how to be flexible enough to move to another software, another package, another set of skills that are going to be necessary. And that's why I mentioned the flexibility, because definitely that's going to be the key to transit in this digital adoption journey that, yeah, I agree, is definitely unavoidable. And I think the quicker we move there, the better, because this is not just a national problem, no? So that comes across with other issues in terms of if there is no enough workforce in the country left behind, or there might be necessary to bring people from other places. So it's a big discussion there that I think is certainly needed. And I understand the first of people to getting to learning new technologies, but there should be also a friendly way to help them to adopt them, because it's necessary.
oh,
And it's that support and encouragement, the framework in which they can do this, which will help with the adoption journey. That's the piece that I think is missing, and that's something that Skills Development Scotland and others have certainly talked about in things like their digital economy skills action plan. Hopefully that will come to fruition as STS moves forwards, and Skills England will hopefully do the same.
oh, well, thank you very much. We're out of finished our time now, and that's been fantastic. Yeah, because there's a general and a specific aspect to this, and both very interesting, and a hell of a lot, enormous amount more we can do on all of them. But thank you very much, Daniel and Aida. So our next webinar is on the 8th of February. We're going to be looking at developments with new UK CO2 storage projects. We're going to hear from Nick Serrell of Carbon Catalyst, but that's it from Digital Energy Journal. And thank you very much. We'll see you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.